Hi, this is admin Soraya. Can I have Anita's last name?
Hi, this is Anna Aronofsky. Anita is Anna Aronofsky.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think I know how to spell that.
Okay, Aronofsky.
Is that correct? Thanks.
Can everybody hear me okay? All right, let's see. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I do this correctly. And agenda, awesome. Okay. Thanks everybody for being here. Welcome to the Design Review Board meeting. All of the meeting body members are attending from a remote location. I am reading a script, by the way. We are holding this meeting virtually, so we'll be doing public comment a little differently than usual via a live call-in phone line, like calling in a radio show if people still did that, or to make a pledge during a telethon. I will call for general public comment on certain issues, and on those items, I'll take comments on items that are on the agenda and items that aren't on the agenda. I will also open the public comment phone lines on each agenda item. Each time we call for public comment, we'll put the numbers on the screen and the meeting ID and give some time for you to go to your phones and call, but you may want to write down the specific numbers and information. When you call in, you'll be placed into a virtual waiting room, and I'll take calls in the order that they come in. When I call on you, please mute your TV, computer, or anything you're watching this with, because there'll be an echo. Tell us your name, your comment. Be aware that there is a delay of up to 50 seconds to a minute from what you're hearing at home in the actual meeting. So it's okay to begin speaking right away. I'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes per person so we can hear from everybody. We'll get started. I'll call to order the meeting of the Design Review Board. Can we have a roll call of members in attendance to determine who is present?
Matt, would you like me to do that?
Staff, please, yes.
Okay. Matt Loomis.
I'm here.
Kyle, I don't know how to say your last name.
Kyle Gochi is here. Thank you.
Okay. Mariah Chestnut.
It's Maria, thank you. I'm present.
Heather McMillan.
Heather McMillan, present, thank you.
Ryan Smith.
Here.
And Jackie Wallawander.
Here.
All right, we have quorum.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody for being here. Staff, board, presenters, public. Let's see. So I believe the first agenda item is to approve our minutes. Our last meeting was actually back on September 11th, 2019. Do we have any discussion or additions or changes need to be made? And hearing none, can we have a motion to approve minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Okay, we have first from Jackie, thank you, and a second.
I'll second.
And a second from somebody off of my screen. Is that Kyle?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And I apologize, my iPad apparently does not want to use the latest Zoom technology. We have a first and we have a second. All in favor of any further discussion? Sorry, no discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Abstentions? Fantastic. Now is the public comment portion of the meeting, and I hope staff will help me on this. This is when we ask the public if there's any comment. Let's see, if you'd like to comment on this item, this is where we open the phone lines. We take, and we'll take comment. Looks like after we'll go to the staff report, then we'll come back to public comment. So there is information on how to call in at this point. To anybody who's out there watching this, we'll answer your calls in the order received. So hang tight while I guess we wait for people to call. If in case they do, we will move on to staff announcements. Does staff have any announcements about anything not on the agenda? Okay. As far as public comment goes, I will ask for any help from anybody about how to know if somebody is calling in.
You'll see them in your participants bar, and we don't have anybody at this time.
Okay. All right, then that is correct. Thank you so much. With no public comment, we will move on to the public hearings. The first public hearing for tonight is for Valley View Terrace phases 6 and 7. And when staff is ready, we'll go ahead with the staff report.
Yep, let me just share my screen here. And can everyone see this? Yep. Okay, so I'm Cassie Trepard. I'm an associate planner with Development Services. I've been here about a year now. Paul Forsting, on behalf of Jean Mostad, requests Design Review Board approval of exceptions to 3 of the Title 20 Townhouse standards for Valley View Terrace phases 6 and 7. The applicant is requesting exceptions to the Townhouse standards regarding garage width, main entry placement, and glazing. The applicant is proposing to construct 32-unit townhouses. Valley View Terrace phases 6 and 7 will be a townhome exemption development. A townhome exemption development is a process that allows land to be divided for sale, whereas a townhouse is a building type. Today, we will be reviewing the design of the townhouse buildings themselves. In 2018, City Council voted to apply the townhouse design standards to townhome exemption developments because there was concern about townhouses in townhome exemption developments not having design standards. Okay, Valley View Terrace phases 6 and 7 is located along Camden Street, Concord Drive, and Manchester Place near the Pleasant View Home subdivision. Okay, per the 2035 City Growth Policy, the subject property has a land use designation of community mixed use. The community mixed use land designation recommends a mix of high density residential and commercial uses. The use of the subject property for 2-unit townhouses aligns with the growth policy. Okay. The zoning of the parcel is RM 2.7 residential 2.7 multi-dwelling. RM 2.7 zoning districts allow all residential building types, including 2-unit townhouses. After this, we'll be looking at photos of the surrounding uses, but I wanted to reference them here on the map to give you guys a better idea. To the southwest, where you see the R10 zoning district and the special zoning district, there are single dwelling houses. Valley View Terrace phases 3, 4, and 5, which contain townhouses, are located southeast of the subject property. And that's the area in the RM 2.7 below the subject property. The properties to the north and east of the property are located in the county. To the east, there is a gravel pit. Uses to the north of the property include single dwelling residential in that yellow C-RR3 area. and then industrial and commercial uses in the other county commercial zoning districts. Okay, here are photos of some of the single dwelling houses adjacent to the property. The houses are 1 to 2 stories. The single dwelling houses provide covered street facing entries and street facing windows, which work to create a positive relationship with the public street. Valley View Terrace Townhomes phases 3, 4, and 5 contain 2-unit townhouses and are located south and southeast of the subject property. Phases 3, 4, and 5 use the same building design as proposed phases 6 and 7. If the exceptions to the townhouse standards are approved by the design review board, the proposed townhouses will look very similar to the townhouses in these photos. Valley View Terrace phases 3, 4, and 5 were permitted prior to the adoption of ordinance number 3609, which applied the townhouse standards to townhome exemption development projects. Ordinance number 3609 was approved in 2018. These townhouses no longer conform to Title 20 zoning code because they do not meet the townhouse standards regarding entry, location, glazing, and garage width. Okay, these photos were taken from the subject property facing north. Land uses north of the property include warehousing, wholesaling and freight movement, manufacturing, heavy equipment sales and rentals, and single dwelling residential. And then there's that gravel pit to the east of the property. However, it's not shown in these photos. 14 dwelling units are proposed for Valley View Terrace Phase 6. The townhouses are oriented toward the side and rear yards rather than the public street. On the front of the units, there are wide garages. The entries are located on the sides of the townhouses. The townhouses have larger building separations than what is required by Title 20. Ample yard space is provided to the sides and rear of the structures. Okay, 16 dwelling units are proposed for Valley View Terrace Phase 7. The proposed townhouses have the same design as Phase 6. And just like Phase 6, the structures are oriented toward the side and rear yards rather than the public street. The buildings are located further from the side setbacks than is required by Title 20. Okay. The applicant is requesting exceptions to 3 townhouse design standards. The first states that the garage width may not exceed 50% of the street-facing facade of each attached dwelling unit. The total facade width of each proposed townhouse unit is 36 feet and 10 inches. The garage width is 22 feet and 2 inches. The applicant is proposing a garage width that is 60.2% of the street-facing facade. The second standard the applicant would like an exception to states that each dwelling unit must have a separate ground floor entrance that is clearly defined and highly visible on the building facade that faces a street, and the door must be within 8 feet of the building's front facade. The applicant is proposing to place the doors on the sides of the townhouses, 26 feet back from the front facade. The applicant would like an exception to the glazing requirement of the townhouse standards. Each townhouse dwelling unit must provide windows or glazed area equal to at least 15% of the building facade that faces a street. Windows and garage doors do not count toward this requirement. The applicant is proposing 8% glazing on the street-facing facade. Okay, this is the proposed front elevation for the townhouses. The garages are the most visible element on the front facade. Each unit has 1 window on the street-facing facade, which equates to 8% glazing, and the main covered entries are located on the side of the proposed townhouses. Okay, design review applications may be approved by the design review board only when they determine that the review criteria, as applicable, have been satisfied. So the first one, the board must consider whether the buildings and structures are located to create a positive relationship with their environment, both urban and natural. The proposed townhouses are oriented toward the side and rear yards rather than the street. The proposed townhouses do not have street-facing entries, and glazing on the front facade is minimal. The townhouses in Phase 6 abut industrial and commercial uses to the north. The townhouses in Phase 6 are oriented toward the rear yards and the industrial and commercial uses rather than the public street and nearby residential uses. Glazing and street-facing entries provide visual and physical connections between dwelling units, the public street, and other buildings on the street. These connections allow for eyes on the street, which promotes safety, interaction between neighbors, and healthy streets. The proposed townhouses do not create a positive relationship with the public street and the houses located across Camden Street and Concord Drive. The majority of the single dwelling houses that we viewed in the previous slide have covered street-facing entries. The proposed townhouses in Phase 6 and 7 do not provide street-facing entries and do not promote interaction with adjacent single dwelling houses. The townhouses do not create a positive relationship with the nearby single dwelling houses. Okay, B, the board needs to consider if the site design must properly address building orientation, open space, light, sun exposure, views, and protection of natural features. In terms of orientation, the proposed townhouses are oriented toward the side and rear yards rather than the street. The buildings are not oriented to promote healthy streets, public safety, and neighborhood interaction. The proposed townhouses provide less glazing than would be required by Title 20. The front facades of Phase 6 are oriented south. South-facing facades receive the most sunlight. The windows in Phase 6 are not designed to maximize sunlight exposure. The design of the proposed townhouses focuses on the side and rear yards. The rear yards of Phase 6 are oriented north, receiving less sunlight. The rear yards of Phase 7 are oriented east and west, receiving moderate sunlight. Ample private yard space is provided for each unit. The site design properly addresses open space. The proposed townhouses are 1 story and will not interfere with views. Okay, on to the next criteria. The building structures and uses are compatible with adjacent properties and uses in terms of physical design elements such as volume and mass management, building materials, color, open space design, screening, and any other design elements considered important by the design review board. So the proposed building design for phases 6 and 7 are the same as Valley View Terrace Townhomes phases 3, 4, and 5. So they are compatible in terms of design with past townhouses in the other phases. Surrounding residential buildings are 1 to 2 stories. The proposed townhouses are compatible in terms of volume. The majority of the single dwelling houses located southwest of the development have covered street-facing entries. Street-facing entries allow for interaction with the street, pedestrians, and neighbors. Phases 6 and 7 are not compatible with the nearby single dwelling houses in terms of physical design elements and orientation. The proposed building materials and color will be compatible with adjacent residential properties. Okay, D, that the overall project will be attractive, functional, and safe in terms of pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular access, parking and loading, and servicing. So the project will meet the townhouse standard that requires the driveways to be combined and centered. The design currently does not reflect this. The applicant is not requesting an exception to this regulation, so the townhouses must comply with building permit. So given this, the overall project will be functional and safe in terms of vehicular access, parking, loading, and servicing, because this will limit the driveway width. In terms of pedestrian and bicycle safety, the proposed townhouses do not allow for eyes on the street because the entries are far from the front facade and glazing is minimal. The visual connections these design features provide allows for passive monitoring of pedestrians and bicyclists, which promotes neighborhood safety and interaction. The overall proposed project will not be attractive, functional, and safe in terms of pedestrian and bicycle access. Okay, so there is a second set of review criteria for projects requesting alternative compliance or deviations to otherwise applicable development standards. These exceptions may be approved by the design review board only when they determine that the proposed plan will result in a development project that does as good or better job of meeting the overall intent of the subject regulations and the zoning ordinance as a whole than with strict compliance. And we'll review the intent of the townhouse standards on the next slide, but on this slide you can see a visual representation of the concept of eyes in the street and just that ability for people when they're outside front of their home or looking through a window to interact with people passing by, cars passing by, and their neighbors. Okay, so these are the intent of the townhouse standards. The townhouse standards were adopted in 2006 prior to Title 20 and then were carried over into Title 20. The intent of the townhouse standards are provided in Title 19. This section on the intent was not included with Title 20, which lacks information on the intent of these standards. As we discussed before, the project is not functional and safe for pedestrians due to lack of eyes on the street. So intent B, which aims to enhance connectivity for pedestrians in the neighborhood, is not met. Nearby residential structures are 1 to 2 stories. The proposed townhouses in phases 6 and 7 are 1 story and are compatible in size and scale with surrounding residential structures, meeting intent C. Intent D describes the eyes on the street concept that we've been talking about. The proposed townhouses are oriented toward the side and rear yards rather than the public street. Glazing and street-facing entries provide visual and physical connections between dwelling units, the public street, and other buildings on the street. The proposed townhouses lack glazing and a street-facing entry, reducing the ability of residents to view and interact with the human interest and activity they find on a healthy street. The project does not meet intent D of the townhouse standards, which aims to ensure physical and visual connection between dwelling units in the street in order to enhance public safety for residents and visitors. The proposed project is a townhome exemption development located in the RM 2.7 zoning district, which is a multi-dwelling zoning district. The proposed 2-unit townhouses enhance opportunities for individually owned housing in multi-dwelling zoning districts. So the project does meet intent E. Intent A, which aims to conserve livability, is not met because the design lacks features that promote pedestrian safety, interaction between neighbors, and active streets. While intent C and E are met, A, B, and D are not. The project does not do as good or a better job of meeting the overall intent of the townhouse standards. So the board must consider if the proposal will result in a project design that is as good as or better than with strict compliance with the standard from which relief is sought. So here's the proposed floor plan. You can see the garage to the front of the townhouse and the entry to the side. This project design does not properly address pedestrian safety, eyes on the street, orientation toward adjacent residential uses, sun exposure, and design compatibility with those adjacent single dwelling houses. So next we have a example of a minor revision to the design that would bring the project closer to compliance with the townhouse standards. So the entry has been moved to the front and more glazing is provided. The bedroom and closet remain part of the design, so you can kind of see the difference between what's proposed and what a possible revision that would get it closer to compliance would look like. So the building separations for the proposed project are larger than what is required by Title 20. The width of the front facades could be expanded to accommodate more glazing and street-facing entries. Increasing the width of the front facades would also bring the townhouses closer to compliance with the garage width standard. So simple modifications to the design would result in a project that better addresses building orientation, pedestrian safety, attractiveness of the street-facing facade, and sun exposure. The proposal does not result in a project that is as good as a design that complies with Title 20 townhouse standards. So the recommended motion, staff recommends that the Missoula Design Review Board approve the request for an exception to the townhouse standard regarding garage width, subject to the recommended condition of approval. Then B, staff recommends that the Missoula Design Review Board deny the request for an exception to the townhouse standard regarding main entry placement. C, staff recommends that the Missoula Design Review Board deny the request for an exception to the townhouse glazing standard. And the recommended condition of approval for motion A is that the facade width must be increased to accommodate an entry within 8 feet of the street-facing facade and 15% glazing on the portion of the street-facing facade that does not include the garage, which will bring the project closer to compliance with the garage width standard. So as long as the townhouse standards regarding entry placement and glazing are met, we would recommend approval of an exception to the garage width standard. Thank you. And then would you like me to stop sharing the screen or leave this up?
Let's actually, thank you. Let's actually leave that up. I'm guessing we are going to have questions. Let's see. All right, so discussion or questions for staff at this point. And I think what we're asking you to do is raise your hand figuratively. There we go. I see Kyle. Kyle, go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Cassie. One question, I think you touched on it in your presentation, but just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, I think the site plans that you showed have a green landscaping strip between the two garage doors on that street frontage side. But did I hear you say that they're actually going to be combined? I saw the examples from the previous phases of the project. They were combined into one. Is that my understanding correctly?
Yeah, and I don't know if the previous phases, maybe Jean can chime in, follow the current code, which does require them to be combined, but they're not requesting exception to that rule. So even though it's not being shown here, when it comes in for building permit, they will need to be centered and combined.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Other questions for staff, discussion? Heather.
Yes, I just wanted to ask staff and confirm, I think I understand this, but the rule to allow an exemption or a variance from the requirement is that it has to be as good or better, has to improve the project overall. That's the exact language, correct? Or, well,
Yeah,
not
this
my
is
words, but
from Title 20.
okay, excellent, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Good question. This is going to be a question for the applicant in a moment, but question for staff first. If you know, when phase 6 and 7 designs were submitted in relation to when these new standards took effect.
Yeah, so prior to their application for design review board, they applied for a zoning compliance permit for the TED, and that was in October of 2019. These townhouse standards were put into place to apply to TED projects like this one in 2018. So we received the ZCP about a year later.
Okay, and to dumb it down for myself, the new TED standards were changed in 2018, but a year later, ZCP was applied for with using old standards, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So the TED project came in, but I don't know if they were unaware, just didn't change the design, but the townhouse standards were added to the TED ordinance to say that townhouses and TEDs must comply in 2018.
Okay, thank you very much. Just getting the timeline down. Okay, other discussion amongst the board members or questions for staff at this point? Okay, if there is none, I believe we have the applicant's representative or the applicant. If you'd like to tell us about your project, kind of state your case.
Yes, I would. Paul Forsting, Territorial Landmarks, now IMEG. I have a PowerPoint and I tried to email it to the group and I got kicked back by a lot of folks. But I did send it to you, Cassie. And I would like to, if I wasn't sure I'd be able to run it, it's simple enough, it's photos, but I would like an opportunity.
If you have it, you should be able to share your screen. If not, if you sent it to me, I can go look to see if it's
Let me try here and we'll see. Let's see how good I am.
It looks like it was forwarded to us actually by Kendra.
Yeah, it was. And so let me see if I can't share it here. Because of somewhat, I think, of what that means. Share screen. Let me pick the right one. How would I do? Nothing.
Looks good.
Okay, cool. You can see it?
I can. Yeah.
See it. Yep. Okay, cool. All right, great. I can't tell, but all right. So this is a photo of a unit that has been constructed here. I think this unit does a great job of showing all the things that we're requesting. What you see here is a garage that is approximately 60% of the frontage. You see glazing that's 8%, because you can't count the garage. And then we see that elongated approach to the house. And that was very much done by design and done based on the type of user, the owner, the buyers, the purchaser here. These are single level homes, really made with zero barriers to entry. We see no steps. We've got a design that's really favorable for our aging population. And we have seen absolutely remarkable sales here. We are almost out, it's completely out here. And going into this year, we were excited about these next 30 and we're gonna close out on them. We had scheduled, this meeting was fundamental to us getting these units approved. If we don't get approved today, we'll turn around, we'll have to cut units because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about making frontages wider, so we can't fit units in here. We'll have to go cut units, we'll have to get an architect to redesign them, and we'll be back, hopefully, trying for next construction season to build these units. Only during that time, the cost will go up, inventory will be down, and I guess that is what it is, and that's maybe none of your real review criteria, but that's the true, when you hear how passionate a person like me is, and Jean might be here too, it's because we're we've got a really exciting product. We're really proud of the way it looks. I'm going to show you a lot of photos here, and I'm going to show you what it looks across the street where compliance is met to the T. And what you're going to see is just two different worlds. And so design isn't brought to you by regulation. Design is brought to you by careful and thoughtful building and constant focus on the individual who's going to be living there. So that's what we see. Let me start with the first slide here and go into the second. So this project, what we are is the last two phases of Pleasant View. And it's not hard to see why. We're crammed up against some industrial lots. We've got storage up on the side of us. We've got a gravel pit right there. And these units, people developed Pleasant View, and Missoula ran out of lots. And Gene came around and said, hey, I'll take those last couple phases off of you. The first phase was filed in 2008. And then it sat there until 2010. That phase was filed, and that product sat there, and I guess it was antiquated because single families throughout the rest of this site wasn't going to happen. Gene came in, worked with the city in 2016, came up with this layout based on the townhouse rules. I wasn't the planner here at our office, nor was Cassie the planner at the county, but there were planners. This plan came out, this exact plan that you're looking at on your screen, came out in 2016, and it was the compromise. It was a solution based on what's available in the rules to create units and as quickly as possible. So what the city and Gene had decided and agreed upon based on careful collaboration was they were going to file these lots, and on each lot, we were going to then be able to use the townhouse exemption to create additional lots. And so no, we had to do it in phases, and we had to build it in phases. And so while we were building these phases, while Gene was busy working and doing this, the townhouse rules in the background changed. Gene didn't pick up on it. I wasn't the case planner here, so I didn't have this layout in my mind, but clearly those rules were changed, and whoever was changing them had this example right there. And I don't see it. I don't see why this is a bad example. I understand why you have rules in general. And you know, when you have those regulations, it helps people from making the cheapest product available. But when people go above and beyond and they use some of these nicer materials and they create a nice design, I don't know that we need to hit all of the minimum standards as much as we just need to look at what we have and how it's being developed and what we plan on developing here in the future. So we have two phases left, 6 and 7, and we want to file those immediately. We have infrastructure plans provided to the city. We're all the way, we're in, I believe, stage 4 checklist. We're almost ready for construction. That shows service lines, everything, every bit of road, water, sewer for phase 6, and we're working on phase 7. All of that's in the works, and this, we're excited to be part of 2020's inventory for Missoula. Here's what the units look like. This is the standard unit that fails to comply with the regulations. Again, I have the picture of the exact unit here shown for you, and this is what's built in the field here today. But above it, it was designed just like it was built. We do see the gap in between the driveways, and that was removed. If you can kind of pick it out on here. What Gene does is he uses a shaded, textured concrete just to provide a separation. I know if I lived in a townhouse, the sharing of the parking lot driveway area, that would be maybe my biggest hang up. So I liked when people have this little teeny separation, but Gene's actually enclosed that area. And so Cassie's right, we don't need a variance for that. We can see our design here. The main problem is that we've got a bedroom in the front, and Gene was with this type of design and trying to get this density. What he's trying to avoid is having a long, too much of a shotgun house, to be frank, and not to have too much of an entry. That we don't want to pull that entry and have somebody walk all the way to the front. We think it's a more desirable experience for them to walk around the building to the side and enter there. And I'll show you a picture how those entries kind of interact into a common area that extends into the back. But doesn't put any fences separating to the front. I mean, we're not talking about a bunch of eyes on the street here that are going to be realized by putting a door on the design here. You know, we're not failing or achieving it. If we look at what the city proposed there, they just said, hey, put a door between your garage and your bedroom. Well, we could do that, but then, I mean, is the idea there that somebody's going to be standing by the edge of that door and like looking out the window? You're only going to go to that when somebody knocks on the door. And so I don't know that you have any more eyes on the street by putting a door there, given that your living area is far to the back. You know, somebody's going to have to walk all the way up there to let somebody in. And that's about it. So I'm not sure we're accomplishing anything. If we just went, hey, strict letter of the law, let's just meet the glazing. We're talking about doubling the glazing here. We're talking about a bedroom with a full-size window, which is very modern, very cool. I just don't know that it's the design element that we're needing every house in Missoula to achieve, especially at this townhouse level. That's what we're going for. just the modern, glass. I like it, and I can only imagine it'll look nicer, and I can only imagine it'll bring the cost up. So we're very sensitive to that type of amenity, and we certainly think we've done a good job, and we have a good interaction with the street. This is what the backs of the units look like. All of the units back into an area like this, and it's in a common open space. It has some screening, some fencing, some barriers, but it doesn't have, I mean, you can see through it, you can walk through it. It's not like an individual house across the street where they put up privacy fencing around the whole thing. And you don't have any type of seeing through there. This is very much the opposite of that. These are folks who want to live in a pod, so to speak. And we think we've done a really good job of creating a buffer from this industrial space on the side. Gosh, I mean, these lots sat here for a reason, and that's because Pleasant View didn't see value in them until the very end. Here's what that unit looks like on the street. Here's your 2 garage doors. Here's your entry. Here's all the things that are out of compliance again. And you can see where we lack compliance, we make it up for in design, landscaping, all the features that, quite frankly, we don't see across the street. This is how the interaction between the units looks. This is that side. Here's 2 together in the side. Here's our buffer between them. Here's how that looks. Here's how the street looks. You can see how phase 6 is going to just go right along the right-hand side of the road there. It projects, and then it's going to turn right around the angle, and then we will see houses here. And so look across the street here. Look at the interaction between they've got all sorts of windows, but you can't say that they've got a more positive relationship with the street than what we have there. I mean, it's just not the case. Here's what it looks like. These are what Pleasant View compliant lots look like. That's what it does. And it doesn't, I don't see it. I just don't see that this is a better design that we need to now sit around for a year and wait and come up with a reason to fix it. I do get that when you make a rule, you sure should plan on trying to hit it. And we did miss it here, but I think we'd be back here anyways. Had we caught it years ago, we'd say, wait a minute, we don't want to lose a bunch of lots here. We've already got a $400,000 product, and that's just what it creates after the end of this. What do we want here? A $450,000 product? I don't know. It's to the point here where we talk about housing, we talk about it a lot, and then when we look at how housing actually gets approved, this is in the trenches of how it does get approved. And we sit here and we're talking about amenities and design features, and gosh, it seems like it's your opinion versus my opinion here. And I like that, what it looks like across the street. Personally, that's what I like. But it wasn't because of the regulations, it's because Gene did a great job with his family. This is what the glazing calculation chart is. Cassie provided it to us, so I won't go back over that, but I have it here. And then I just have here at the end slide here, I wanted to leave it on this slide if you had questions for me, so we kind of pick up on all the things. We're really excited about this. We really appreciate you being for us. We were queued up for your 4-8 meeting, and it was such a bummer that we got canceled. We're here today. We're super excited, and we want your support. Thank you so much.
There we go, unmute. All right, Kyle, it looks like we want questions now or discussion for the applicant, but we'll start with Kyle, please.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I have lots of questions. So foremost, I think for the applicant, for Gene and for Paul, I absolutely agree with you that the product being offered is very nice. And that's not just my opinion, it's also the public's opinion in the form of the awards that you've received. I know that you've had at least one parade of homes on these townhouse units in the previous phases. And so I've personally been in these homes, and they're very nice. And I do think that it's unfortunate that, 5 phases of this project were constructed before these new requirements were put in place. And so for me personally, I feel like that's a big component of this that maybe we haven't talked about yet, is that these homes are the same as previous homes that have been built in the immediate vicinity. And so it's the same, if similar to the character of the other homes in this neighborhood. And so for that's a big part for me, because then we're not making a big detour from what is already out there. I do want to talk about, and this is my question for the applicant, the glazing component of this. I believe that you're at 8% and it would be 15%. Have you calculated, I understand the garage windows are not included in that calculation, but if they were, those windows along the top were included in the calculation, would you be meeting the requirement of 15%? Have you guys checked that?
I haven't checked because of that exclusion in the regs. I just, can't count that because it excludes the windows. But I think if we would like to take credit for them, and if that was part of the consideration to say, hey, come up with 15% in a combination of your frontage and your garage, we would appreciate that as an alternative to denial of that condition.
Yeah, understood. And maybe this question is back to staff. I know you had the landscaping shown in the middle, and I get it. I think that having that be concrete or hardscape is easier maintenance, and you don't run into, oh, this owner is supposed to take care of it. No, this owner is supposed to take care of it. And so I get why the requirements say that it needs to be paved as one straight across driveway. But is that the intent? I guess, Cassie, is that the intent of that zoning requirement is to alleviate the maintenance issue? Or I guess I'm curious to that, because if that was in there, then the whole driveway width thing would be a non-issue, the 60% versus the 50%.
Yeah, I'm gonna go reference and look back at Title 20 real quick, but I think the intent is more to sort of reduce the access so that you don't have driveways that are separated and you have less access points, which means it's safer for pedestrians to pass through. You have more sidewalk as opposed to driveway accesses.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
Although good points. I would argue that, well, I love the divided driveways and I've seen them on other duplexes and townhomes. I think the reality is it's a waste of money and time because it's just going to get driven over. It's going to get wrecked. And you can call me the Debbie Downer, but save your money. Spend it on something. Spend it on more glazing.
And I understand totally what you guys are talking about with the glazing. With that being a bedroom in the front, that'd be a huge honking window facing the street side. So I get that. And then because doors aren't included, it's not even like you can go with a glass door, at least partially glass door.
You actually can. So it's not included in garage doors, but glass front doors do count towards glazing requirements.
Okay, good to know. And I know Paul said when he made his little rebuttal there that if this doesn't get approved, you're essentially saying that this project won't go to construction this season. I am curious, is that accurate?
Yes, it is accurate. And I mean, that's a reality of anybody sitting right here, and he's battling that even if you approve this, season's almost gone. But yes, that is very accurate. And we were hoping, had we had a little flexibility, had you seen us in April, that was our window. Had we had to come back to redesign, then we could be back here, but we've lost it, unfortunately.
And when we had our intake meeting, we did kind of draw over the floor plan and show that there was a way they could have easily revised it to just get the project through without having to go to design review board, but they chose to keep the design and go this route, which does take longer.
And at that point, I would disagree. And Gene, I don't know, you could chime in and say that you saw a layout that would do it, but if we're talking about cutting lots and things like that, then yeah, I mean, and certainly not trying to, give you a hard time specific to it, but it just, I don't know that, and Gene, maybe at this point, it'd be a good time for you to step in and say, gosh, you built these nice units and you really have been trying to communicate the positive response you've received to them. Gene, are you here? Are you live?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Is it okay if I talk?
Yeah, I guess just introduce yourself. We'll be good to go.
Gene Mosted, President of Mosted Construction. Yeah, I have some comments on some of the comments that staff has made in the overall townhome designs and how those communities interact and live with each other. Probably since 1988, I've been building, we call them townhomes, but we really call them maintenance-free communities, where these communities sometimes have attached buildings, sometimes they have separated buildings. In this case, we're doing attached units because of being able to create more open space. So in Missoula over the years, I built the Brookside, I built in the Elk Hills townhomes, Elk Hills, the ones out at the Ranch Club, Orchard Homes out on 3rd Street. I probably over the years have been the one builder that has focused mostly or more than other builders on the style of living and the type of floor plans that they like to see and the way that these communities like to live. These communities live differently than people that go to work every day. Because not that we market our subdivisions this way, but I would say 95% of the people that live in these communities are 55 or 60 and older, and they're mostly retired. So they spend more time with their residents rather than the people that go to work every day and are just at home in the evening. And I don't really necessarily agree with the way that the staff has redone the regulations for this type of community, as far as they're saying that they're not safe for the neighborhood and they don't interact with the street and things like that. Because if you out in that community during the day or during the week or during the month, there's more of those residents walking around the sidewalk than there is in the neighborhoods in a 7-day week, because they're there all day. And when it comes to their entries look at each other. So they're interacting with each other as they're coming and going, more so than if their entries were on the streetscape. And if you really think about it, on the way that the houses are on the other side, and I understand the staff in the residential neighborhood wanting the front porches and stuff, because I build a lot of houses that have front porches and stuff. And yeah, they do add to design. I'm not denying that, but I'm trying to talk about this kind of community, not only this type of community, but this community when we started it, as you saw on the plat, everyone saw that what we wanted to do in the beginning to finish out the project. And we might have missed it, but we weren't really included in the decisions when they were changing the rules. So that's how come it came to a surprise to us. And in the fact that these communities are managed by like ADIA property management, and all the grounds are professionally taken care of every week. Everything is always beautiful. And they usually have some of the highest resale values in the market because they are taken care of all the time. They're repainted when they need to be, they're re-roofed, all that stuff. But we also do not allow people to completely fence off their yards, because we want the open space. The residents that live there want that interaction with their neighbors, not like the people across the street that fence off their yards and hardly ever talk to their neighbors. These communities interact all week long. They're at this place having lunch, or this place having dinner, or they get together a lot more than a regular neighborhood ever thought of getting together. That's why when I design these things, I design them based on past experiences of doing these developments and what this clientele does. Now, I know the stat, and excuse me, but when staff wants to redesign my developments and add a bedroom here, it irritates me a little bit because they don't understand the clientele that we are working with. And one of the things that they don't like is to walk in a front door and then they have to go 3/4 of the way through the house to get to the back. If you look at the design of those houses, they are designed so the kitchen, the master bedroom, dining room, and outside area are all in the back, which communicates with the back open space with everyone. And if you walk through there, the back of those houses are a little closer than you would see in a regular neighborhood. But they like that interaction. The reason they're moving to that community is they want that security. They want to be looking out for each other, even in their, mainly in their backyards, because that's where they live. We do put privacy units in between the patios on each unit just to give them that privacy. But that's all they want. And if they want to be with their neighbor, they'll walk across the fence and say hi. So when it comes to design of housing, townhomes have it's a whole different game rather than the people across the street. And it must be obvious because last year we sold 24 units out there. And the only reason we got slowed down was because of COVID and now our new phasing requirements. I guess all I'm really asking for is for us to be able to finish this development how we started and how we showed staff when we started. I am not asking for anything different than I did 3 years ago.
Mr. Mostad, thank you. I want to give make sure it's understood. Make sure you understand that I believe when staff is proposing, you can do this, you can make these changes. I don't think they're trying to redo a design. I think they're trying to help you comply. Staff, whether it's Cassie or anybody who has been in that position or will be in that position in the future, they have rules they have to work with. You have building codes you have to work with. They have much more arcane, weird rules they have to work with. And it's all public stuff. They don't really get to decide. That's why we have boards like this. So I appreciate staff trying to give them other options, not just saying this doesn't work, come back with something else. It is the applicant's prerogative. If they don't like what those options are, that's what this review board is for. So I do appreciate, Cassie, I haven't met you yet, but awesome that you're looking out for everybody. That's pretty cool. And I want to remind the applicant that we're not here arguing the rules about townhome developments or exemptions. That was done between 2016 and 2018. I don't love them. I don't think anybody in town loves them, and I still think we have a problem at the state level with townhome developments and exemptions. But we're not arguing that right now. We're discussing this specific plan. I do absolutely have sympathy for the applicant. If you submit a plan, you can't build every unit at once. The plan's approved by whatever bodies need to approve it. And when it comes time to building the rest of it, you're told, oh, by the way, we changed the rules on you. That stinks. And even though it was a public process to change the TED rules, things slip by us. I get it. And I think that is something that as a board, I think we're taking that into consideration. But the TED rules that were changed and adopted in 2018 are not really up for discussion at this point. I want to move on. Cassie, you had your hand up previously. Was there something you wanted to add?
It came into the discussion. It was just, kind of looking at other alternatives to DRB and getting the project through.
Okay, awesome. And then before I go to Heather, Mary from staff, did you have something?
Sorry, I had need to unmute. Mary McCrae with Development Services. I just wanted to talk through the process a little bit. This is phase 3 of a subdivision when it was originally approved as Pleasant View Homes number 5. And the applicant came in and proposed to convert it to phase 3 into phase 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And they need to file a final plat to create the lots that these townhome developments will be built on. So at the time, when they did the original one, I understand there's expense on road improvements and other improvements for the filing the phase of a subdivision, but had they filed all of them at that time and done a TED declaration for the whole thing, they could just be building these out right now. So they opted to file the final plat for phase 3, 4, and 5 of Pleasant View number 5 subdivision. Then they came in with their townhomes declarations getting approved via the zoning compliance permits for that phase. And then they came in to file phase 6 and 7, and then also submitted their ZCP. So it's a little bit different than the rules were just changed on. And with the TED, there were choices they made at the time when they only decided to do a portion of the filing the final plat and proposing their ZCP for that portion of the TED. In addition, I just want to remind the board and the applicant that staff didn't propose these changes. City Council was the one that requested the planning section of staff to work on revisions to the townhouse standards. And it was in response to projects coming forward with primarily a garage on the front of the units and not the entrances. And it was council's decision to ask staff to move this forward. It went through a public process, and it's council who adopts those regs, and then it's current planning staff that's required to implement those regs. So it wasn't Cassie or any of our staff that changed these regulations, I guess.
Thank you, Ms. McCray. Heather, you have been waiting patiently with your arm hanging up in the air.
Yeah, so tired. Gosh, I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because having worked across the state, townhome exemption is something allowed by the state, and not every jurisdiction uses it or allows it. And it's because of, I would say, the abuse of or the lack of kind of controls around the townhome exemption from a design standpoint. And I support, and the reason I'm on this board, the thoughtful process of the implementing design standards and these rules being applied to townhomes. That said, that wasn't applied because of your projects, Jean and Paul. I appreciate your passion because you create a really nice product, and it is definitely something that's needed, and we need that stock here in Missoula. And my frustration is like, I really want to see a front door. I want to know when I walk up there, I'm walking to the neighborhood, I would walk up and knock on that front door. And that's the only thing I can see about your development that isn't neighborhood conducive. I completely believe you that the residents congregate in the back, seniors or not. I can imagine, I mean, it looks like a beautiful layout, and I'm sure that their neighbors are talking to each other. And so I just really want to be sensitive to this, because I just think this last phase of the project just kind of fell in between, and it wasn't your type of project that was being solved for in 2018. It was everybody else just not doing enough and getting the efficiencies of the townhome exemption entitlement process. Could go walk through a subdivision process that would take time and money. So from an affordability standpoint, be able to bring your product in at a price point that the market needs, the townhome exemption is perfect. So I'm just struggling. I'm just trying to figure out why. Did you guys spend time going back and looking at the floor plan? It's not a question of your design, because it's a very good product. I mean, was there an ability to apply a front door or a different version of this facade? And nobody likes anybody, especially me, changing their designs on the fly, because you've had a lot of good intention here. And I don't want to upset the apple cart, because I know you'll sell these every day, all day long, as soon as you get them developed. I just really, that type of development, and the reason those standards are there is if you drive down there and if they were on both sides, it would look like an alley and not a street. But your point, the things that comply in that neighborhood are not as nice as your product either. And so I'm just struggling right now. Was there any consideration on a modification that would at least accommodate more of what, great streets, good streets, and kind of those goals of which we struggle with? Don't get me wrong, some of the standards as rules. Were you able to spend any time doing that, or did you choose not to? And I can completely empathize, or probably sympathize with not knowing the rule or catching the rule change at your last phase. That's a challenge.
Well, I mean, if you look at the plan, and Mary was the one that put the bedroom up front there and moved the door and stuff. And the biggest reason we don't like that, or the market doesn't like that, is because it makes it feel like a shotgun house. I mean, when you walk in it, you've got to walk by everything before you can get back to your living space. And that's, I'm not saying that we still couldn't sell them, but it's not an ideal situation at all. And it isn't.
Yeah, we feel firmly we fall within the better design category here. That's where we feel. I think you can see it on Gene's face. He's very proud of these.
I can put a bigger window in the front bedroom. I can add another pane onto that and have a huge window in that bedroom. That's not a big deal. But they're not going to. That particular bedroom is used as an office most of the time, but the way that it's designed. So it isn't really something that they stand in and look out on the street and stuff. But that part of it, I would be fine with. It's just locating that door that close to the street with that kind of design. I've worked with national builders, consultants and stuff on floor plans. And, one of the things that we always try to do is figure out our floor plan before we ever figure out the lot stuff. But in this particular project, a lot of the lines were already there. The reason that the Didells wanted me to go in and build townhomes there is because John was ready to retire, who has passed away now, but the neighbors didn't want 8-plexes in their backyard. So John asked us to build townhomes there instead, which I think was a good choice. And the neighbors seem to be ecstatic about it. And we've helped raise property values everywhere around there because of what we've done. And it's just, even if I made an entry and came out from where the door is now and turned it towards the street so someone could see it, something like that's going to be better than bringing it all the way up to the front because of, a 45-foot long hallway to get to their kitchen and family room. That's why, they don't mind it at all. I'm just really afraid of how that would impact possible sales later. I don't know, but I know that's always been something in our design threats and stuff when we talk to our a group of clients that they don't want. They want to feel like they're, even in all the designs that I've done before, all the same comments.
I definitely don't want to see us redesign your project, so to speak, but if there was a way to see a front door and connect to the street that way without disturbing the overall flow, and I understand that the inherent nature of the use of space in the back and the aggregate area in the back, I just think that speaks to the street, and I think that's what those intended design standard conversations were about. It's not exactly complying, but I don't know if that's an easy thing to do or not. I don't want to presume to know that.
And I don't, at least I haven't heard anybody speak negatively about the design of it. I know most ads work. There's kind of some signatures to it, and they're nice. I think it is odd. It is weird. Although I understand. I think it's odd that we're saying, yes, this same builder was allowed to do it the next block over, but they're not allowed to do it now. But I totally understand why. From the design review board point of view, if I'm correct, there's basically 4 criteria that we're supposed to be looking at, and only 1 of 4 does this really meet the criteria. That's part of the problem. No one's, in fact, there's staff notes. It is attractive. It is functional. But there's but 3 out of the 4 criteria, it does not meet. We can still allow it. We can say, okay, we need to be comfortable with our decision. If we do that, we need to decide as a group if it does a good or a better job of meeting the overall intent. I think we're also between a rock and a hard place as a board, because we may like the design, but does it meet, are we doing our job if we just say, well, we like it, so good. This is one of the harder ones we've seen, because it does not meet so much of what it's supposed to meet, good project or not. Are there any other, Ryan, you have your hand up, go for it.
Yeah, so I would agree with the new regulations in place. I think that they're all improvements, and it's unfortunate they weren't in place when this project began. My question for the applicant is when they became aware of that things had changed before phases 6 and 7. Were they unaware?
Sorry, we were unaware. Yes, we were. Yeah, and I'm a consultant. I've been doing subdivision townhouse developments for 13 years, and every time new regs come out, you have to take a project and sit there for 4 hours. And I promise you, it's a very difficult exercise. And so, having not been the planner on this project, it wasn't on my mind. Gene wasn't aware that regs were being changed. If somebody was aware of it, I'd like to think the planning office, the folks like Mary who had sat and worked with us, they would be aware of things like that. They would say, well, wait a second, I've seen high quality design, and I don't know that these standards are the only way to get there. That's where I think the people who should have been looking out for us, I feel like the developer is always the one who is holding the bag, right? We don't have an application, we don't have an approval, we're sitting here today. And I can completely understand the requirements for review criteria. I would say that the rules have gotten us to right here. Now we need to go in front of people that are not the rules, and they need to look and say, okay, we're in a crisis here in Missoula, and how have we gotten here, and what are the things we can do to start making improvements? And when we see something, we say, oh, we might find it, we might not, it may not be perfect, but it's not ugly. I think that's the kind of approval that folks are looking for. That's the kind of thing where Gene says, wait a minute here, so I don't get it. I just don't get it. I've been trying to do nice things. I'm doing a nice thing. And I get it. We have criteria. I'm very familiar with it. I'm the chairman of the Board of Adjustments for the county. So good for me, but I do know very well the criteria requirements. And what we do with that board is when we see something, we know it, we feel it, the criteria seems to go in a way that is approval. And that's always been the way it is. And so I feel my experience with every board has been that way. And when anybody starts bringing up the criteria, we're sure for a denial. And so I hope we don't go down to which criteria we're going to be perfect with or not, because at any point you can come to some point and say, well, the applicant should have done better and he just needs to follow the rules. But we are here at your mercy, and we do think we have something nice here.
Any further questions for the applicant at this point? Okay. My apologies. Seeing none, we are closing the presentation portion of this. Is there any, sorry, I think I'm doing this right. I'm looking at like 30 different documents here. Is there any public comment? I want to open public comment on this. And while we are letting that load, if anybody does have any public comment, any discussion amongst the board or questions for staff at this point? I guess I'll throw out kind of a blanket question. Oh, Heather, go for it.
I'm still struggling with this because I do think the standards, the intent of the standards are good while it conflicts with this project. I guess the question is for staff, are we setting a dangerous precedent if we were to approve? Basically, I mean, you're asking for a qualitative opinion and it would be a change. Right now, if I read the regulations, this shouldn't be approved because it doesn't meet the criteria on so many points. But I'm just saying, are we opening a door back up to which those standards were discussed at length and included because we had the lowest common denominator, not this developer, not this project?
I think, Mary, did you want to speak to that? You have your hand up. If not, I can. But this is the first, design review board request we've seen for the townhouse regarding the townhouse standards. So it does open the door for more to come after this, and our decision can affect that.
And Mary, would you like to add?
No, Cassie covered it.
Okay.
I would say though, Heather, that, I mean, if the intent was for every application or every project to meet all the requirements, well, then there wouldn't be the purpose of us on the board, right? So
yeah, I agree with that. I just have very strong feelings about front doors and street frontage and quality of streets. So I was very much against giving so much on the concession with that because of the alley feel, but I understand the nature of these particular units and their quality for the residents. And it's a good project. I just struggle with a direct flip of the rules and why they were discussed at great length in between 2016 and 2018.
Yeah, I'm with you. I definitely get it. It's this is a difficult one.
Jackie, did you have something?
I was going to bring up the precedent thing too. That concerns me as well. I think the only thing I would say about that is that this is in addition to an existing project as opposed to a new project, that might be asking for an exception. I think there's that. And then I had another question too. Could somebody just remind me who it was that made the changes in the regulations?
Mary, you want to take that?
Yeah, City Council directed planning staff to come up with options based on having some design standards and applying the townhouse standards. That was one of City Council's requests. And so those regulations move forward to planning board with a recommendation for approval and then to City Council, and City Council approved them.
Thank you.
And Matt, did you say earlier you weren't necessarily crazy about the new regulations?
Well, I think they're imperfect, that we I don't want to put too much opinion. It seemed like there was a majority of the building development real estate community did not like the previous rules, and I think there was a fast tracked update. I think it's an improvement. I don't know every last thing to it. I think it's just one of those, I believe we're still bound by some state restrictions, but it's an imperfect process. But I'm not saying that we should throw them away. No.
Right.
Maria.
Yeah, just kind of dovetailing on Heather's question, can can a developer in the future use precedent to gain, for instance, no front doors, or is it a decision by decision basis?
Let me chime in and say that I think it's a decision by decision basis. And what I would say why our project is unique is that we are at the end of the road. I mean, we had all of our designs ready. We wouldn't be here today if we said, okay, we want to design a townhouse project, and okay, let's come up with a design that doesn't meet the rules, and we'll see you at the design board review. We actually had this layout. Gene said, hey, it's going to cost me $50,000 to even move these lines around and to see what else I have. I really like this layout. Let's go take a shot at getting this approved. And in April, that made a lot of sense. We've went all in. We've got all of our infrastructure plans in. I mean, we are all in. We're very unique. I don't think anybody's going to be anywhere close to have as much skin in the game as we are here at this project.
If I can comment, is that okay?
And who's this? Sorry.
This is Gene. If I
Gene again. Okay. Quickly, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and Paul's right. If I was starting this project over and we were reviewing the regs and stuff, then I wouldn't be. I don't think I've ever had the history in Missoula of trying to come in and not have something that's going to not comply. I'm a little frustrated because when I started this whole thing and it was totally complied, and we showed the city the whole plan, when things got changed, that's frustrating to me. And when it comes to precedents, I think that when you look at this project and the way that it was done, it's going to be, like if I'm going to do another townhome development when I'm done with this one. I'm looking for the property now to do it. I'm not going to come into the city and say, well, you did this over here on this for me. Now I want to do this. I know that's not going to fly. I'm just trying to get this done in the same manner that I started it, just like all the other townhome developments that I've done. I have put it out front, what I'm going to do. I did all of them that way. And that's all I really want to do here is just finish this the way that I said that I would do it. That's all I'm really looking for.
And Maria, to add to that, I mean, I have no reason to not believe the applicant when he says, if you do it for me now, I'm not going to ask for it again. But we do come across this, with every hearing we have, we are setting precedent. Anything we allow, fortunately or unfortunately, is open for future debate. And that doesn't mean that this applicant or another one is going to say, well, you did it there, but they have every right to. So that's something we look at, and mostly it's had to do with signage. When you give a little, the next one wants a little bit more, and so on and so forth. I have lost track of who is ahead. Maria, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah.
Or did I miss that? Okay.
I guess I was more wondering for the staff to answer the question. As far as they can say that there is, precedence and I guess I'm not necessarily worried about, Mostad coming back for this. I'm worried about other developers coming back for it. And so my question to staff is, can they say, well, you allowed it on this project, so you're required to allow it on another project? Or is it that we get a decision by decision basis? I just want to clarify that.
I mean, it is decision by decision, but if someone comes in and they will, could possibly make the argument that this was allowed on a different project, why not theirs? And that's why the, review criteria is in place too, to kind of give more of a definable way to approve or deny, so that you don't have as much, precedent that you're not following, or developers complaining that they weren't allowed to do something and someone else was in a similar situation.
May I add to that? This is Mary.
Mary, please, yes.
So I think, you know, the big picture is every board that the city has needs to make sure that their decisions are kind of consistently applied and not arbitrary and capricious. So yes, you do look at each individual situation, but you would have to come up with specific reasons that this project does a good or better job with the garage and no entry in the front in meeting the intent of the subject regulations, because that's sort of the decision you'd be making. And so if someone else came up with something similar, I'm not sure that the argument, I'm just not sure how the argument regarding, well, he's just finishing out the rest of this Pleasant View design is, because it's not really what the criteria is asking. You know, it's the criteria is talking about whether the project does a good or better job of meeting the overall intent of the subject regulations. And I think if someone came in with something similar, I'm not sure what the argument would be against it, right? If this was approved.
Thank you. Heather.
Well, Maria asked and Cassie and Mary answered my exact questions. My struggle is sitting on a board and setting the precedent. It's not just that, it's we have to be consistent. And then when we're not consistent, or when staff gets hammered because they're not consistent, and that's not fair, because the reason we had this discussion and why the rules were rewritten and they were applied in between 2016 and 18 was to take some of that. We as developers didn't want questions, we wanted guidance, and this is just slipping into the crack. I do not believe that Gene and his team would do this, that they would just do it following the guidelines the next time. Of course they would. So I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about, as a board, setting the wrong structure. And it's for the next developer, not our applicant today.
And thank you, Heather. I would agree with that. And Mary, thank you for the further clarification of, you know, what we're being asked to do. It's not simply a case of, do we like the project? It's pretty. Let's, you know, the rules don't allow it, but we think it should be allowed. We have to be able to explain ourselves, and we have to say that it doesn't meet the criteria by the letter of this, that, and the other, but it does meet the criteria. And unfortunately, I can't honestly say that I think it checks all the boxes. I think they look great. I think that they will sell. I think that a lesser home would sell, and I think a greater home would sell. But I don't think it meets nearly enough of the criteria for me to be okay with approving it just from this standpoint. Is there further discussion amongst the board members or questions for staff at this point?
I have one question for staff. If we have to reapply our application, how long is your current review time on the ZZP? I think it's a relevant question because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about resupplying. And so what is the current review time, to be honest, with this? And so if we submit, you know, what are we really talking about for timeline? I think that is the last thing.
You still, oh, Mary, do you want to speak to it? Because I know they still have to file their plats, correct?
That's exactly what I was going to say. So go ahead, Cassie.
Yeah, so
and leave plats aside of it. I mean, just zoning compliance, how long is it going to take for zoning compliance? I get that we can complicate it by talking about all the other things we have to do, including a phasing amendment now. Effectively, we have to immediately apply for it because we're going to be dead because we couldn't meet our deadline this year. And so we're going to have more process coming, and then we have a whole nother zoning compliance city. And Mary's going to tell you, if she's being honest, that I'm a year out from even getting reviewed on this thing.
All right, so Mr. Forsting, I'm going to cut you off at that point. You cannot comment anymore. But if staff would like to comment to that, feel free.
Okay, Mary McRae with Development Services. So it's not, the question isn't really how quickly you can get your zoning compliance permit, because you have to get your final plat filed before that zoning compliance permit can be issued. You've met the deadline for submittal of the phase because you did submit a final plat within the deadline, and you were given a deficiency list. So once you meet those deficiencies and come back in, you can get your final plat filed. So once the final plat is filed, the zoning compliance permit can be issued, and it can be issued concurrently. I'm not sure how long it will take you to put together that final plat packet to meet those deficiencies. So I think, Paul, and Jean, we'd have to work together to work with you on what your schedule is for that, and get your zoning compliance permit back under review once you resubmit for a site plan that meets the design review board decision tonight.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, staff. At this point, unless there are no other comments from the board, I would suggest a motion in regards to the issue at hand.
Matt, I'm about ready to make a motion, but I do want
Kyle.
to say one more thing, and so we can discuss it as a board. Just as board, I think that it's important. I feel strongly about, so normally I'm the one that's echoing the precedence issue. And like Matt said, usually comes into signs, right? Somebody wants a 20-foot sign, but they're only allowed a 10, and you let them have it. Well, their neighbor's gonna want that now. This one's very different to me because this developer has already built a lot of houses in this area. It's still meeting the same character as the neighboring houses. I understand that the requirements changed on them, and that's why we're here today. But the importance, I feel like the importance of us as a board is to work with the developer, okay? And we're given these requirements, and they need, I feel like it's our responsibility to make sure they meet the salient characteristics of the requirement. Not that it's 60 versus 50% and we're strictly looking at the numbers. I feel like we need to say, okay, well, why was this requirement made? For instance, the glazing requirement. Okay, well, they were probably trying to get away from straight wall, no windows, not having that connectivity to the street, facade improvements. And I personally feel like we can't deny that this isn't beautiful from the street. The other one is the door one. And I feel like the applicant is mitigating the door issue, the eyes on the street, by having the walkway on the side. They're still connected to their neighbors. It's not like they're walking around to the back entry or a hidden area. It's clear for visitors from the sidewalk and from the street to see where the doors are on the side, at least in my opinion. And so for those reasons, coupled with the fact that it meets the character of the neighborhood, I'm a strong supporter of this. And before I make my motion, I guess I'm going to open it up to us as board members if we have any discussion on what I just said there.
Any comments on what Kyle said?
Yeah, this is Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ryan, go for it.
Yep.
So I guess I'm going to disagree with Kyle. I think that the new stipulations that the city put in place are generally good design principles that were not in place for the first 5 phases, which I think is unfortunate. I don't think that justifies ignoring those principles for the next 2 phases.
Good point, Ryan. Thank you. Jackie.
I think I agree with Kyle, and I think one of my big questions I have, which was sort of the same thing I ran into at the last meeting, was what is the purpose of our group? Because if we're always just going to do what the staff recommends, then there is no reason to have our group. Why would we? It's unnecessary.
Well, one, and that's a very good point. One reason is that staff, given the, I guess, the ordinances or the rules of city council, staff does not have the authority to say you need to make these changes. They just have the authority to suggest changes to make, and then we are the board, the citizen board, that's given the authority to accept the staff changes, deny the staff changes, give our own changes, etc. So we, in the 10 years that I've done this, I am anything but a rubber stamp, I'll tell you that. But that's really, you know, even if that's all we were, it's because staff can't legally say, you don't meet the requirements, but we're going to let you do it anyway.
Thanks for the reminder.
Oh, sure. Heather.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jackie. I'm still struggling because this is the reason that things were rewritten and it was a little more applied, and why we went through this is so there wasn't subjectivity and qualitative. While I respect Kyle and Jackie's opinion, I agree with Ryan. I don't think it's better. And the front door thing is really bothering me from a root issue. And I don't like the fact that we're coming down to these minor little hairs that we're splitting, and it's subjective. And that's what, as the developer, we didn't want any of that. So I guess I'm frustrated. And I maybe a question for staff is, so if they were to make some modifications that come closer to complying and meet several of them, is there a way to streamline the process for them, or streamline through us? Can we do a conditional approval of some things that they need to show in their application? I just don't understand well enough how far back they're going to have to go forward to see if it could still be feasible.
Cassie,
Mary?
do you want to take that? I mean, basically they've already submitted, so they need to submit revisions, and it's a resubmittal. It's not like they're behind at the very beginning of someone initially submitting a zoning compliance permit.
Yeah, they still have an open ZCP, so really we just need revisions based on whatever the board decides at this meeting. Because it's, you know, something from last year, it would be at the top of my queue date-wise, and I would review it once I received those revisions. It would be higher up on my priority list. I could get it done fairly quickly as long as they're meeting other codes.
And as far as the final plat is, those always take precedence. Those are at the top of our priority. We have statutory deadlines in state law that require the city to review and either issue a deficiency list or approve and get it signed by the mayor and approved. So it does have to go on a city council agenda, but that impacts our time frame, not the applicants. That's all within the 20 days. So it's either signed by the mayor, you know, or we give them a deficiency list. So it's kind of on the applicant. If they submit a complete packet, they meet all those deficiency items, you know, it can move through fairly quickly.
And Cassie?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone too that the requirement in Title 20 isn't for this, you know, door being directly on the front, but within 8 feet of that. But that does make it more visible from the street if you bring it up closer. But I just wanted to clarify that it's not for exactly a street facing entry. It could be on the side, but just closer to the front.
Yeah, the 26 feet versus 8. I caught that.
Kyle, you had discussed a motion.
Yeah,
or
I'm
anybody
ready.
else?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay,
So I'm gonna make
yes,
a
sir.
motion. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve all 3 of the applicants' requests for the exception to Title 20.
I second it.
And I'm sorry, so we had a motion from Kyle, and I was looking down. Was that Jackie who seconded that? Okay, thank you. Motion to approve as applied. Second from Jackie. Discussion. Okay, with none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Yes. Matt Loomis,
No.
Kyle, I'm sorry, Gautier,
Gochi.
Gautier,
Yes.
Maria Chestnut,
No.
Heather McMillan,
No.
Ryan Smith,
No.
and Jackie Wallander.
Yes.
That's 2 in favor and the rest no.
All right, the motion fails to pass. Somebody can make a different motion. We can continue discussion.
I figured that was going to happen.
It's the process. Yeah.
I think Heather and Ryan, you guys have been at least the most vocal about not wanting to approve the applicant's requests. I think, are we going to be able to reach a decision tonight, an agreement that we can all agree on, or are we too far apart? I guess, Heather, it seems like maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe yours is the door thing more than the glazing in the driveway. I mean, if we were to make a condition that door, we approve it all, but the door has to be within 8 feet of the front. What do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, great question. I don't have any clue how I ended up in this conversation, because this is the last thing I want to have as a developer. This is not this is crafting random things into the conditions. And so I want to be very careful about this, but I think that if we could set it up and do a motion, in theory, if there's a few things, and it's not just about the door, there's great streets and pedestrian, and there's a lot of things I feel, but for this, if we could talk with, maybe ask the applicant, are there things that in your mind that you can make adjustments that better, not us telling you what, are there better ways to closer meet some of these intents? Are there things that are simple to do that you could easily make changes? I guess I'd like to know that, to if there's something we can do today to make it simpler to move forward.
Okay, let's and we can go that route if you'd like. Maria, you had your hand up.
You know, when we had asked earlier, this kind of, I mean, to move the door to 8 feet from the front puts it in the bedroom, and that shoots you into redesign anyway. I mean, I'm not really certain that's going to help the, I mean, you know, Jean would say differently potentially, but I think my struggle is that when we asked, you know, did you attempt to redesign? And what I guess I felt I heard was, we really like it the way it is. This is what sells. This is what we want to do. And that's why we came here instead of going through redesign. So maybe I'm just echoing the question that Heather did, was, is there any modifications? Because my understanding is the answer was, nope, we want it like it is.
And Mary.
I was just wondering if Cassie could put up the slide that had the recommended motions and the conditions. So if you're going to craft a different condition or motion, that you'll have that, you know, so that you can look at that and maybe craft some language relate, you know, either changing the condition as is or deleting it or replacing it. Staff will need something pretty clear at the end of this meeting, so we know what we're implementing.
Just to be clear, is this a 55 plus required neighborhood? Like you have to be that old to live in it, or technically anybody could buy it? It's just that's who typically buys it.
One moment. Okay, yeah, so either Paul or Jean, if you'd like to comment on that.
I'll comment. No, it's not a requirement that you have to be 55 or older, but because of the way those developments are set up, because you can't have playground equipment and that kind of stuff that are put in the covenants, it ends up being that way. And you can't have fences.
Heather, I don't want to reword what you were saying, but I think this might be a good point, good spot. I think what you were basically saying is, instead of just potentially saying no, go back to the drawing board, it sounded like you wanted to ask the applicant, you know, what can we do instead?
Are there more efficient gestures that could be made without, you know, modifying the whole design? I understand flipping functions around is totally different from an architectural plan than adjusting a few facade pieces.
And I would ask
Thomas.
the applicants if you have anything to comment on that.
Yeah, I do. One of the reasons that we didn't redo a bunch of designs is that, and I have comments about possibly what we could do, but I really wanted to get everyone's thought on the development itself and the rules, because I did get kind of blindsided by the whole change and stuff. So I wanted to come in and see just how the boards worked and what the process was. But I appreciate the staff saying that the garage facade stuff is acceptable to them. I appreciate that. And like I talked before, you know, we could take the window in that front bedroom and make it larger to get as close to the 15% as we could. And then and just for this development, you know, I know that the door doesn't have to, see, I always thought the door had to be facing the street. I just learned tonight that it doesn't have to be facing the street. It just needs to be within 8 feet of the front facade. Because I really did, it wasn't communicated to me that way. But if I took the front door like I talked earlier and brought it out so that you could see it and towards the front a little bit, but not having to go the whole way so that then I'll create this long hallway in there, I would do that. I would bring it and make it so you could see the front door from the street, you know, and maybe bring it 5 or 6 feet closer so that I don't have to make that too long. And then it's going to be a lot bigger entry and stuff. But if I could get something like that and the larger window, then it would, I would do that.
And I think, Jean, that's where we're trying to not, I think that would show the intent and that would be closer to the statute. It's not perfect. I get it doesn't fall exactly in line with those townhome standards per the letter, but then there'd be less, and I don't know how to craft it, what we would, the motion to give you the approval to do what we just talked about, and that would, where I would rely on staff, that where we would be minimizing those exceptions. I appreciate your consideration on some of those components. I also sympathize with time constraints. So I'm wondering, as staff, is there a way, if the applicant were able to do that, how would you adjust your, I don't know if you make a recommendation, what would we need, how would we need to word that?
Mary, go ahead.
So I think you would change the first motion. Well, the first motion maybe could stay, but you change the condition. The B motion would be conditional approval. And it sounds like you're, you know, Jean was talking about moving it 5 or 6 feet closer. So that would put it at 20 feet behind the front elevation. So you could specify that within 20 feet, I guess, is what you're saying. And so, and then you'd have to change, I don't know how you're landing on C in terms of glazing, whether you want that to be deny and require the 15% glazing. And then we would change the condition to say to have an entry within 20 feet of the street facing facade. And then
maybe we could add in that door, the door facing, because it's not required per the statute, correct?
yeah, I mean, it's not saying that. The condition says the facade width must be increased to accommodate an entry within 8 feet of.
That's right.
So you'd say 20 feet of the street facing facade, and then determine whether you want increased glazing or not.
Thank you, Mary. Ryan.
Well, I was just questioning the idea of the front door, the way I read the staff's document is the door is required to face the street. Is that not the case?
Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted. It's not. It does mention that the street or the door needs to be clearly visible from the street so that you should be able to face it and it should be close enough that you can see it. But then it says that it can be at any angle to the street as long as it's within 8 feet and those other standards are met. I think it's clearly defined and highly visible is the way it's worded.
And before we go to Kyle, Jean, what realistically, without reinventing the wheel, but keeping the entry door on the side of the house, how close do you think you can get it and make this plan work for you?
Well, I'm kind of at your guys' mercy now. I mean, everyone understands what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to get it as close to the street as I can. So it's going to just depend on what you guys tell me I have to do, and then I'm going to have to figure it out. I would appreciate if we could come up with some resolution so that I don't have to, so that I can continue on as timely as possible. I do appreciate Heather's comment on that stuff. So.
Thank you, sir. And Heather had something to add?
I was just going to say, if you read it then verbatim, and I'm a visual learner, not audio, but highly visible, if we're not coming in with 8 feet and we want to keep it further back so we don't mess up the plan, then I would want to see the door turn and face so that you could see it further, deeper. That's just my opinion, and that's dangerous.
Or looking at this proposed floor plan, even just flush with the exterior wall, because tell me if I'm wrong, but having it kind of sunken in that way makes it just even less visible from the street.
Well, that, and I mean, if you can bump it out and face it facing the street, because it's so far back, it's definitely visible, but then it also solves your width problem potentially.
Aha.
I'm trying to nick off the conditions, the exceptions.
Yeah. Kyle.
I am so happy. I feel like we're doing our job here by working with the applicant. And so good job, everybody. So. Yeah. So happy. Jean, what do you think about that? What do you think about, I guess the last thing I would want to do is to come up with a resolution here when we pass a motion and you leave here saying that it's unfeasible, it's going to add a bunch of costs to your project, and undoubtedly it's going to add cost to your project. But I guess what are your thoughts? I feel like the glazing thing is almost a non-issue now. You already kind of brought that to the table that you can bring that into compliance. But what's your thoughts on this door?
Well, because of the way the regulations are, if I can get by with bringing the door out and making it visible to the street, because of the way the design is now, I'm not going to just bring that door out and turn it to the street and then not have a porch in front of it, because
the roofs don't work.
Well, not only that, but people want to have a covered area when they come to a front door. So if it's raining or snowing and they're coming to their company's house, they don't want to be standing there getting soaked. So we always try to put some kind of cover in front of the front door. And plus it adds design elements to the project too. That's how come I have them on there. That's what it's doing now, is it, if I just would have put the door in there and then didn't put a porch roof over it, then yeah, it would really look weird. But that's how come, when you look at it from the street, where the front door is, because I put the posts and the roof out there saying that's where it's at. So if we bring it out and turn it, then I'm probably gonna put the same size of porch in front of it.
Mhm.
And there appears to be
comfortable
enough.
with that?
Well, I'm not saying that I probably will, I would, because I'm not gonna do something out there and not have a porch in front of it.
And you have the width, right? I mean, as far as space from the structure to the property line to make that happen.
That I don't know yet. I've got to look at that with Paul.
And so that's where I'd want to be really careful about how we craft this because there may be some site constraints. I get that, but I want to be really thoughtful to give the clear path forward.
It sure seems like, well, there's not, a ton of room. I believe these buildings more than meet the setback requirements. So if it adjusted the setback, by a foot or 2 or 3, I believe both phases have the width, and I'm not a planner or engineer on this, but it sure seems like it. But we can, yeah. So we can, if the builder's good with that, we can suggest turning the door, not to totally get off it with the glazing requirement. The requirement is 15%. What's proposed is 8%. We're not going to get to 15% with the current design. I don't think so. Or Heather, am I totally wrong?
Well, are we, if you count the glazing in the garage door and the front door area that we just added?
Sure. And possibly yes, but as is in the criteria, no, because the garage is not allowed to be counted. So I'm saying, but we can say though, Gene's offering to increase that front window, and if we like that, I think we should take him up on it, but we have to have something in there. And I'm just, without measuring, we may suggest it needs to go from 8% to 10%, something like that.
Gene, do you know where you'd be?
Well, I would be over 10% if because I would add another pane on there. So it's going to make that window a third bigger.
Oh, okay. So we could say 12% and be safe.
Yeah.
Okay. So just because we can't count the garage technically, but we are understanding the design of it works.
Can you get to 15, Gene, without the garage door? With the front door? Just curious. I just want to get rid of the exception.
Yeah, I can if I'd have to make it wider by a third, and then I just have to keep taking it down until I met the 15%.
Yeah.
Maria has her hand up.
Yeah, I think they answered it. I was just remembering, I thought a slide from Paul that showed essentially like how much square footage of window they'd need to add to reach that 15%. But it sounds like Gene kind of has it dialed.
Okay. And Mary?
I was just going to add that perhaps if there was some glazing in the door that you had facing the street and the pane on you add the pane on the bedroom, the facade, you might get to that 15%. I'm not sure if you counted that in as
well. Well, the doors do have glazing in it, but it's probably only like 1.5 square feet, because there's 3 windows on the top of them.
Okay, and there's no side light or anything like that. I was trying to make it easy for 15 to comply. Maybe it's not.
There is a side light too. Yes. About half of the height of the side light.
Kyle.
Well, I love making motions, so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion so we can move this along. All right. So I am going to make a motion that we approve item A on staff's recommendation regarding the garage width. And on B, we approve a variance of a door up to 20 feet away from the facade only if the front door is facing the street. And on item C, we approve a variance of glazing, but it must be a minimum of 12%.
Okay.
Was that clear enough, staff? I know it's a little dirty.
Okay, so can I just restate this back to make sure we understand? So B would be, A stays the same as on the slide. B would, you change deny to approve, and you include subject to the recommended condition of approval below. And you do the same thing on C, okay? But then the condition itself could state the facade width must be increased to accommodate an entry 20 feet back and facing the public right of way. Is that what we're saying? Or facing the street,
The street, and we may even want to add like a minimum angle that needs to be facing. I don't know,
Yeah.
staff.
or parallel to the street. So it's an
Yes.
entry parallel to the street, okay? And then, and 12% glazing on the portion of the street facing facade that does not include the garage. Is that?
That is,
making sense?
yep, that is correct. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, so Kyle's motion is cleaned up to his liking, correct? Okay,
Correct.
so we have a motion. Do we have a second for that motion? Second for Kyle's motion. Heather, I see a hand up.
I'm going to blow Robert's rules of order. If I speak, I was going to suggest something, but so I'm not seconding it yet.
Okay. Yes, we need a second for anything to move forward. Okay. Okay. The motion fails without a second. Heather.
I would move that we do what we just said, A, modify B, and not allow a variance from the glazing. And I'm hoping that the applicant can work with that and leave it at 15%. That was not very Robert Rules of Order-ish, but.
Okay, Heather has a motion that I think for ease is the same as what Kyle said, but under recommended motion C, a recommended condition is to, well, actually basically to deny the request because we're asking for the minimum 15% glazing. Okay, so we have a new motion brought by Heather. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And Maria seconds that. Discussion. I guess I want to say that I do think that if with the bumping out or moving of the entry door, I think, man, that's got to be really, I think that's doable on the glazing. And I don't think Heather would say it otherwise.
Hoping Jean agrees with me.
So we have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote on this motion?
Matt Loomis,
Yes.
Kyle Gochi,
Yes.
Maria Chestnut,
Yes.
Heather McMillan,
Yes.
Ryan Smith,
No.
and Jackie Wallawander.
Yes.
All right, that's all yeses and one no.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the applicants. I appreciate you, especially Jean, stating your case, show your frustration, man. The process stinks sometimes. And I really appreciate the board working together. I think this end result, which I know the builder can produce, is just a matter of, is again a work for him. I think this end result gets me comfortably close to feeling like I approve something that we're supposed to do instead of just an opinion. So I appreciate that, everybody. Okay, the next item on the agenda is another public hearing. This time it is the Maple Street Commons Comprehensive Sign Package. And for this, we will have a staff report when staff is ready.
Thank you. Let me share my screen here. Are you seeing it in presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay, good. Great. Good evening. My name is Emily Gluckin, and I am a planner with Development Services. Tonight, I will be presenting a comprehensive sign package request for the Maple Street Commons development. This request was submitted by Roger Parchin of Art and Image Design LLC on behalf of Maple Street Commons. The subject property is located on the corner of West Broadway and Maple Street. The development consists of 4 tracts of land that will be considered as a singular parcel for zoning purposes. At this time, 5 buildings are proposed for the development, with 1 existing, 1 currently under construction, and 1 that was just recently permitted by Development Services. The Missoula growth policy designates the subject property as a combination of regional, commercial, and services and community mixed-use land designations. Both land designations encourage a broad range of uses and activity levels, and the Maple Street Commons development is consistent with this designation. The property is zoned C2-4 community commercial, and a portion of the property is located within the Design Excellence Overlay, classified as Corridor Typology 3. The surrounding area is zoned M1R2, M12, and C1-4, and the surrounding uses are primarily commercial and industrial uses. On the property today, a ground sign currently exists adjacent to a driveway entrance along the West Broadway frontage for a building with, it's showing businesses in a building that will be removed soon. The sign is 156 square feet in area and 16 feet tall, and will be removed and replaced as part of this sign package. This comprehensive sign package request includes 3 ground signs for wayfinding and wall signage for the current and future businesses. 1 monument ground sign is proposed at the private road entrance on West Broadway. This is labeled A on the west side of the property. The 2nd ground sign is proposed at the driveway entrance on Maple Street. This is labeled B on the south end of the property. And the 3rd sign is proposed at the intersection of the private road and the driveway towards the interior of the site. And this is labeled C on this site plan. Minor signs that do not require a permit are proposed along the private road. These are labeled D. And finally, the label E on this site plan signifies the locations where wall signs are proposed for each building. And I'll go more in depth in the following slides. The monument ground sign on West Broadway is 84 square feet in area and approximately 7.5 feet tall. Title 20 permits a maximum of 72 square feet in area for ground signs in commercial districts. And the proposed ground sign will exceed this maximum by 12 square feet. However, the ground sign is significantly smaller than the existing signage in this location that was shown on the previous slide. This proposed sign will comply with the maximum height limit of 22 feet, and it will be illuminated. The monument ground sign proposed at the intersection of the private road and the driveway in the interior of the property is 14 square feet. This is shown on the right side of the screen. 14 square feet in area and 7.5 feet tall. And the monument ground sign proposed at the Maple Street driveway entrance will be 44 square feet in area and 11 feet tall. This is on the left side of the screen. Both of these signs will comply with the maximum allowed dimensions of Title 20. Title 20 states that only one ground sign per parcel in commercial districts is allowed. Therefore, this sign package requests 2 more ground signs than the permitted amount. Moving on to wall signs, the DJ&A building located in the southeast section of the development and currently under construction will have 2 20.25 square foot wall signs. One of these will be on the south elevation facing Maple Street, and the other one will be on the west elevation facing a parking lot. Additionally, one 6.25 square foot wall sign will be on the north elevation facing a parking lot. Signage for future tenants along the Maple Street frontage will be required to comply with Title 20 requirements. The Movement Collective building currently exists in the northeast section of the development with tentative plans for remodeling in the future. This sign request includes 1 wall sign per tenant on the southwest elevation facing a parking lot and facing towards West Broadway. Each sign will consist of 10-inch channel letters and will not exceed 50 square feet. This is shown in the middle of the graphic where it says ULA Fitness. That's a sample of the style. Additionally, wall signs or window signs for each tenant are proposed on the northeast elevation facing a parking lot that will not exceed 18 square feet in area. Additionally, the window signs will comply with the Title 20 requirement not to exceed 30 square feet or 30%, excuse me, of the window area per business. Finally, on this same elevation, tenants may have 1 hanging sign per business on the northeast that will not exceed 6 square feet, and they will all be 10 feet off the ground. These signs will comply with the regulations for hanging signs as described in Title 20. For future buildings, the Sentinel building is on the southwest portion of the property and was recently permitted by Development Services. The applicant has not proposed specific signs for this building as part of this comprehensive sign package. All wall signage on this building will comply with Title 20 requirements and will be reviewed during the sign permit phase. Future buildings on the northwest part of the property on tract A3 will be allowed wall, window, hanging, and directory signs as allowed under the sign ordinance. Future buildings would have frontage on West Broadway and would face towards Maple Street. At this time, the specific uses and specific locations of the buildings have not been identified. Staff determined that this comprehensive sign package meets the overall intent and purposes of the Title 20 sign chapter and recommends approval with the following 4 conditions of approval that I'll show in the next slide. The first condition of approval is that future sign applications or modifications of signage require approval of a sign permit by Development Services, and Development Services will base permit approval on the sign package approved here today by the Design Review Board. This is a standard condition. The second being that the owners and administrators of Maple Street Commons have the right to restrict future sign size to areas under the Title 20 allowances if they so wish to. Third, signs allowed without a permit, as described in Title 20, these would be the minor signs that I mentioned before. will be reviewed by the owners and administrators of Maple Street Commons. And finally, any applicable electrical, building, and sign permits shall be obtained prior to the installation of any signs. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that report. Right off the bat, any questions for staff? Kyle, no.
I'm just gonna put it out there right now that I am an engineer and shareholder for DJ&A, one of the occupants on this site, and I'm also the engineer for all three developers on this property. So I will be participating in today's conversation, but will recuse myself of voting.
Thank you, and I believe Heather, you have something else.
Yes, I need to identify myself as I'm a small business owner that will potentially be renting from one of the applicants. And so I will be abstaining from the vote as well, participating in the discussion, but abstaining from the vote.
All right, thank you both. Kyle and Heather, you bring a lot to the table, so I appreciate your part in the discussion. We do and will still have a quorum to vote on this, just for anybody out there who's curious. And lowering the hand. I think the only question right off the bat for staff that I had was, at least in I think a couple of the pieces, it looked like we are approving the numbers or placement of signs, at least on the Sentinel building. If you could just clarify that for me, because I don't think we really are. But this trips me up every time when we do a whole site sign package for something where future signs aren't known. It kind of puts us in an odd spot where we're sort of blanket approving whatever is allowed.
Yeah, that is correct. In this case, since we don't have the specific proposals for the Sentinel building or those future buildings, it would be more of a blanket approval that as long as they're complying with the Title 20 size requirements, then they would be acceptable. But at this time,
Okay.
We're not reviewing specific placement or designs or things like that.
Thank you. And then similarly, just because we do a lot of maintenance on Title 20, would any future buildings, any future signs, those would have to be to the standards as of today, not any future standards. Would that be correct?
Right. I
Okay.
believe so. You mean if the sign code were to change?
Yeah, sorry, exactly.
I believe so. As the sign permits come in, it's based off of what was approved in this package today.
Okay, thank you. Ryan.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Am I muted? All right, sorry. So just to clarify what Matt asked to staff, so that applies to the two northern parcels, is that correct? That don't currently have signs proposed? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right. If the applicant wants to present or tell us about their project, this is probably a good time. You've been waiting patiently.
Thank you.
Oh, and Roger, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Roger Parchin, and I'm a sign designer and architectural sign consultant. I have been working in Missoula for about 25 years on sign projects, so I have a lot of experience with DRB projects under my belt. I've worked on community medical center projects and the Broadway building on St. Pat's and Providence, as well as Eastgate Center and other projects. So this is kind of a unique project because of the multiplicity of buildings on the parcel, and also the multiple locations into the parcel, which have very different lines of sight. so that's therefore the request for the 2 ground signs, because someone entering the property on the West Broadway site is not going to see some of the buildings in the back. So, and those buildings face internally. So what we're requesting is just really logical wayfinding, and we're trying to make it easy for folks coming into these places, especially around medical facilities. I found over the years that, you know, they're stressful. They can be stressful for a variety of reasons. So we want to make things really clear and concise. The reason also for the DRB process is that we want to provide consistency and signage all through the buildings, the future ones that haven't been determined yet. We want there to be quality standards, pan channel letters. We're not going to be allowing rectangles with acrylic faces just slapped up on the side of a building. There's just a quality standard that needs to be adhered to as here. And we've done a lot of due diligence in getting to this point in terms of crafting what we feel is an appropriate and it's not ostentatious, I should say. It's well within good limits, and it's well thought out and well placed. And again, if I'm going to share a screen if I can real quick with you, and just go over the site real quick, showing, just outlining these lines of sight coming into the property. And so let me click that up real quick. Well, we'll try here. Here we go. Okay, can everybody see the site here?
Looks good.
So again, off the Maple Street entrance, you have an ingress road leading into the center of the development. And then also on West Broadway, you have a curving road also leading back to the northeast corner of the property. So you have very different lines of sights at the different entrances. So the 2 ground signs make good sense here in terms of just wayfinding and getting folks to where they need to go most efficiently, and not concentrating traffic on that West Broadway entrance. So again, the ground signs being on West Broadway, the main sign, that does meet the 50 square feet triangle for visibility. It's just going to be on a little split entry in the islands there. And then on the Maple Street side, that sign is placed perpendicular to the roadway just for ease of vehicular traffic. And then the sign placement near the Movement Collective building near the corner helps direct traffic, both pedestrian and vehicular, back to the public access side of that building, which will now be on the northeast side. So that's just a critical wayfinding point to make sure folks can see where they need to go. I think, you know, generally, again, with the multiple wall signs on the Movement Collective building, those are well thought, well placed out. There is a greenway that stretches all the way from the south end on Maple Street that goes to the north along the DJ&A building, crosses the roadway into the development, and then proceeds on to the north on the west side of the Movement Collective building. And I believe this is going to connect to another greenway project, which will provide pedestrian access throughout these properties on West Broadway. And I think that Rob or Peter could comment on that. So I think Emily presented everything fairly well. I don't have any other questions or any other really things to add than what she said. Anybody has any questions? I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant? I think, you know, my only question, I think I just confirming what seems to be the obvious to me. The interior sign, which I guess is considered a street sign, it's not. It's for I'm sorry, I drew a blank. It's basically for direction. It's to help people find the way. That's pretty much what it is. Is that what you would say?
Wayfinding?
Yes, it's really just because of that, because of the public access now shifting to the back side of that building, There's no visibility of those public entrances from the interior of that development. So something is really needed at that juncture, at that intersection, to say, hey, folks, you need to keep going down this road to the back of this, and that's where you're going to find whatever business you're searching for or looking for. Thank you.
And I don't know if we'll get into too many nuts and bolts on this, but I appreciate the designers, the developers, signs that are not just sign cans, I forget how you put it, just a rectangle box, they are more expensive. They look so much better, and they make your buildings look better, and they complement nice buildings. And it's, we already know that site's going to be a million times better than what it has been. I was impressed to see the proposal. When I saw sign pack or comprehensive sign package, I'm thinking, oh, geez, there's going to be 20 signs, and there's going to be this. I think it's really well thought out. I think it's really well done. I think out of the group here today, Kyle's been with me the longest, and we've seen some sign packages. We wish they all looked like this. I have no problem, by the way, with the oversized. I think it's just one of the monument signs is technically oversized. Right. But then when I read it's replacing an even bigger sign, which is probably, a little inferior to what's going to be going in its place, no problem. And I understand the need for two. Their rules are rules, just like we talked about with Valley View. This one with signs, it's a little bit easier for us to justify needing to change this or change that. Those would be my 3 cents. Heather.
I was just going to add, and I know I'm not voting on this, but I'm intimately aware of the site because I currently rent in a building that's going to be demolished there. The fact that Missoula grew the way it did in this site and I'm developing a site across the street, it's kind of a mess as far as infrastructure is concerned and connectivity. And so I'm really pleased with what the applicant has put together as far as wayfinding is critical. There's just they're huge blocks and it's a sea of asphalt, and the redevelopment of this is going to be beautiful. And the wayfinding is absolutely critical to just know where things are. And it's a beautiful package I think they put together as well. So, and I am not a sign expert, so I'm glad that you're pleased with it, but it'll help from a functionality standpoint quite a bit.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, we will close that part and open up any public comment that anybody might have. This would be the public comment portion. And are we able to post the phone numbers just in case? We'll give that a little time. Just want to make sure everybody has their chance. Okay. The phones are not lighting up. There we go. So we'll give that a little chance too. Any other discussion amongst ourselves?
I would just say that the civil engineering and site design on that project is exceptional.
I'm impressed with how much is coming out of it, to be honest. I'm fairly familiar with the former uses there. So I'm really impressed with how much looks to be accomplished there.
Actually, do have a side note on the next vote. I didn't realize it was going to go this late and I need to get my kids, but we still have a quorum if I leave after this vote. Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, I am not seeing any public comment, but thank you, staff, for putting that on there. So this closes the public comment portion. And now it is up to the board to discuss, or since Kyle probably shouldn't make a motion, anybody else could make a motion. Unless there's questions for staff.
Can you put the staff recommendation back up like you had done last time?
If it will work. Sorry.
Well, wait a minute. Here, I took a picture of it. No, that's no. There are no.
Sorry.
It doesn't seem to Emily, the conditions of approval. There's nothing that's not boilerplate, correct?
Yep. I think
There we
maybe the only one that's not not totally standard is that the owners can restrict sign sizes under Title 20, but that's pretty standard too. So these are all regular conditions that we would put. So the motion, there we go. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve the sign package with the stipulations that staff has put forth.
Okay, we have a motion from Ryan to approve as recommended. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Jackie. All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, Kyle and Heather have abstained. So we have Matt Loomis,
Yes.
Maria Chestnut,
Yes.
Ryan Smith,
Yes.
and Jackie Wallander.
Yes.
All right, unanimous.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to the applicants and representatives for sticking it out. I think we're looking forward to seeing this corner continue to improve. And before we move on to the next thing, Maria, anytime you have to clock out, I appreciate your time tonight and your comments and consideration.
Maria, thank you for covering for us that had to abstain, sticking around.
Thank you all for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Good luck.
Well, thanks you all, staff, design review board, Roger, well done.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. The final public hearing of the night will be another, yes, comprehensive sign package for Missoula Bone and Joint. And we'll have that staff review when staff is ready.
Again, I'm Cassie Trepard. I'll be presenting on Missoula Bone and Joint. I want to thank Jesse, Sammy, and John for sticking around this long for this. Okay, let's see. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, so Missoula Bone and Joint requests review by the Design Review Board to amend their comprehensive sign package, which was approved in September of 2001. The applicant is requesting approval of 4 existing signs and 2 new signs. They are proposing to add a new ground sign and a new hanging sign. Okay, Missoula Bone and Joint is located off of Mullen Road in Great Northern Loop at 2360 Mullen Road. In the last year, the clinic constructed a new building on the lot adjacent to Mullen Road. The new building is not shown in the aerial photo, but you will see it when we view the site plan. The new addition to the medical campus required changes to parking and pedestrian routes. The applicant is requesting 2 new signs to help visitors navigate the site. Per the 2035 city growth policy, the subject property has a land use designation of community mixed use. The community mixed use land designation recommends a wide range of commercial uses as well as residential. The use of the site as a medical office aligns with the growth policy. The subject property is zoned M1R-2, limited industrial residential. Abutting parcels to the north, east, and west are also zoned M1R-2. The land south of the property across Mullen Road is zoned C2-4 Community Commercial. The use of this site as a medical office complies with the zoning designation. Okay. The site contains 4 existing ground signs. The existing signs were approved by the Design Review Board with the comprehensive sign package in 2001. The existing signs were approved under Title 19. The proposed new ground sign, sign number 5 on this plan, will be located near the entrance to the ambulatory surgery center. The proposed new hanging sign, number 6 on this plan, will be located outside of the discharge center. Both signs are situated to help visitors of the new ambulatory surgery center navigate the site. Okay. The 4 existing signs are shown here. The first is an 87 square foot ground sign located at the corner of Mullen Road and Great Northern Loop. The 87 square foot ground sign is 20 feet tall. The sign complies with Title 20 in terms of area and height. The second existing ground sign is located near the parking lot entrance off of Great Northern Loop. It is 28 square feet and 11.5 feet tall. This sign also complies with Title 20 in terms of area and height, and it's positioned there to help lead people into that parking lot once they've turned on to Great Northern Loop. The 2 existing directional signs are both 12 square feet and 5 feet tall. They are located in the parking area and outside of the existing building on the north lot. These signs were permitted under Title 19 as oversized directional signs. There is no comparable definition for these signs in Title 20. The signs can be classified under Title 20 as ground signs. The signs comply with the Title 20 in terms of area and height. The applicant will apply for a sign permit for a change copy of the sign that says surgery center, as the existing building will no longer be used as a surgery center. Okay. The applicant is proposing a new ground sign outside of the entrance to the new ambulatory surgery center. The sign will be 16 square feet and 6 feet tall. The new ground sign will direct visitors to the surgery center. This sign complies with Title 20 in terms of area and height. Okay. And this is just an elevation of that ground sign. The new ground sign will be backlit. The applicant must obtain electrical permits for the new ground sign. Okay. The applicant is proposing a new hanging sign outside the surgery center discharge area. The proposed sign is 3.3 square feet. The lowest point of the hanging sign must be at least 9 feet above the sidewalk or vehicular area. The lowest point of the proposed sign is 11 feet and 8 inches above the pavement. The proposed hanging sign complies with Title 20 sign regulations in terms of area and height. To summarize all this, all the signs comply with Title 20 sign regulations in terms of area and height. However, only 1 ground sign is allowed per parcel. The applicant is proposing 5 ground signs, 4 existing and 1 new. 4 of the ground signs are used to direct visitors to the parking lot and throughout the site. And then our recommended motion, the Missoula, oh, I got lost here. Yep, the Missoula Bone and Joint Sign Package request includes more ground signs than is allowed in Title 20. The Design Review Board can approve a sign package when it determines that the signs are part of a comprehensive design plan that meets the overall intent and purpose of Title 20 sign chapter. Development Services recommends that the Missoula Design Review Board approve the comprehensive sign package for Missoula Bone and Joint, subject to 3 conditions of approval. The first is that signage shall not be modified without approval of a sign permit by Development Services. Signage shall not be added without resubmittal of an application and approval from Design Review Board, and any applicable electrical, building, and sign permits shall be obtained prior to installation of the signs. And again, like with Emily's presentation, these are fairly standard conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Cassie. Appreciate that. Any questions for staff at this point? If no questions for staff, then we invite the applicant if you'd like to say anything about the project.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. I'm Sammy Spencer with Missoula Bone and Joint, and I just wanted to say, well, we do have one property. We have 3 separate front doors, and this is just for wayfinding. Like Roger said, medical can be stressful, and so the signage is super important, especially when we have people coming when it's still dark out, trying to figure out which door to go in and where to pick up their loved ones when they're discharging out of the surgery center. Just wanted to thank you for your consideration.
Absolutely. Are there any questions for the applicant?
One question here.
Kyle.
So your ambulatory surgical center, it's in operation currently. That's correct, right?
Yes, we built a new surgery center.
Right. And are you seeing are you seeing any issues with folks finding their way around the site? Is this in response to, I guess, patients' comments, or I guess describe the need?
Sure. So we have 3 separate entrances. We have an urgent care, we have the clinic and physical therapy, and then we have an ambulatory surgery center. So that's what the need is, so that they can get to the right building, the right entrance. And same with the pickup for when a patient's discharging. The loved one will come pick them up on that opposite side of the building.
Excellent. Understood.
I have a quick question for the applicant. Are those just very well done superimposed signs, or have those actually already been installed?
They've been installed.
Okay. Question for either the applicant or staff. How did that happen? How were sign permits issued?
We have not issued sign permits for this property, aside from the existing signs.
All right.
Got a little out of order.
Looks like Jesse Proctor has their hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the signs were installed by the contractor, and it came up during the inspection that the sign installer had not applied for the permit.
Got it.
So
that clarifies. I'm glad you mentioned that, Matt, because that clarifies my original question. Is I thought that those signs weren't installed, and that was just an awesome rendering, and so that's why I was like, well, the signs look good, but they want even more signs. So thanks for bringing that to my attention.
So that's my only concern with this, and this doesn't happen all the time, but it I don't get it. I don't get how a reputable sign contractor, whether they're from Valley County or Missoula County, can install a sign, and why a property owner would allow it without getting a sign permit. And we don't really have recourse for saying bad, but that's I don't know. Just let me wag my finger or something, because everybody else has to get a sign permit. So I'm disappointed that a large business in the community that does know better just didn't do what they should have done. Cassie. Oh, just a moment. Cassie.
I just wanted to say, thank you for, having it when it came up at inspection, being honest and coming back in to go through the correct process to permit it. Even though, that mistake did happen, you still came back and are trying to get it approved and get permits and get everything in place.
And good point. Thank you. Ms. Spencer, did you have something?
I was just going to say, in the owner's defense, we didn't realize just because it was in our parking lot, it was an internal signage. We do know any roadside or external signage we have to get approved, but we didn't know.
Okay, and that's that's fair enough for the business owner or property owner. Heather?
I was just going to ask, I'm assuming that you expected your reputable contractor to have taken care of it. It just depends on how the contract documents are written and who does signs when. So don't wag your finger too hard at the applicant, but I do appreciate them addressing it directly and running it through as quickly as they could.
Yeah, in the end, thanks for letting me get all, hot and fiery about that, because not every applicant deals with signs on a day-to-day basis. I'm more disappointed in the installer for doing that.
But to your point, it shouldn't be done without permit. Agreed.
Yeah. Jesse.
Just to further Sammy's statement, that these signs are more than 90 feet from the property line from the nearest street frontage. Just as far as being visible to the pedestrian access or being having any kind of influence on the pedestrian or street frontage out on being visible out on Great Northern Loop or out on Mullen. They are very internal signs.
Thank you. And yeah, I see them. Yes, similar as, they're internal wayfinding signs. And I don't think any of us have a problem with that. I just felt like, well, okay, let's at least get this out of the way. Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant? All right, we will close the presentation, open up public comment one more time. We'll give a minute or so. I'm not expecting much, but so many ways that all of you people in YouTube land can be commenting on this. And I know that all you want to do is call in and be like, you know what, design review board, you guys just rocked it tonight. Thank you. Really appreciate it. That's just, it's not like I, have dreams that that's going to happen or anything, but that's totally cool. I do appreciate everybody, and I'm sorry to the applicant, Ms. Spencer. I didn't mean to come down on you. Your world is not the world of signs. So, and I do echo what Cassie said. I really appreciate you as the applicant, just saying, you know what, I don't know what you said, but essentially we goofed. So what do we do to make this right? And I am not someone who says, well, too bad you had your chance. No, I'm glad you came here. It's happened before, and we've had applicants who were not nearly as willing to fall on their sword and just say, well, what do we have to do? We've had much worse situations. So this seems fine in the end. Seeing and hearing no public comment, we will close that portion and open it up for any discussion that the board might have, or any motions that the board would want to make.
Thank goodness it looks really nice, and probably something we would have approved anyhow. So yeah. We don't have any other things we want to talk about this. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the package with all of staff's recommendations.
We have a motion from Kyle to approve as recommended by staff. Do we have a second? I will second it. How about that? All right, we have a motion and we have a second to approve as recommended, subject to the 3 conditions that are on, I believe, everybody's screen. Is there any discussion? All right, don't see any. Let's have a roll call vote then, please.
Matt Loomis,
Yes.
Kyle Gochi,
Yes.
Maria is absent, Heather McMillan,
Yes.
Ryan Smith,
Yes.
and Jackie Wallowender.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to the applicant and the applicant's representative for hanging out with us this evening. I hope you learned a lot about townhome developments and glazing. I hope I never need your services, but it's good to know that they're there. The next item on the agenda is any old business. So we last met 10 months ago. Does anybody have any old business, staff, anything we need to be updated on or? Okay, seeing none. New business, we, from time to time, we need to nominate officers. This board has 2 officers, a chair and a vice chair. And so we will be accepting nominations for either of those. I am the current chair. I am more than happy to continue, but I'm also more than happy to step aside. Kyle has been a very trusty vice chair. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm happy to continue in that role.
So I would, I guess a question on procedure. Do the chair and vice chair have to be nominated together or separately? If staff knows.
I do not know.
All right. Well, I'm going to say separately is okay, I think. So I would nominate Kyle to be vice chair.
I would second that.
And I'll nominate Matt to be chair.
I'll
I'll
second
second
that.
that too.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other nominations or speeches? All right. Seeing none, you guys are great. Seeing none, so we do have a nomination for a chair and vice chair. I guess all in favor of the 2 nominees, say aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed or abstentions? Okay. The chairs will stand or sitting in this case, and thank you, everybody. Any other new business from the board or staff? So the next thing is comments for board members. And I think my only comment is those that have been up on the email chain lately is thank you. I know Jackie, I think your term expired, my term expired. I feel like Maria's might have. But thank you everybody for just staying with it. As I tell people all the time, the world is basically sick right now, or it's fighting with itself, or whatever you want to see. So there's a lot of other things happening that I think kind of overshadow just the design review board. So I appreciate those of you that were able to attend. I think we actually got full participation. We have some openings, and for those of us that haven't been reconfirmed yet, it's fine. City Council has other things to do right now. They've had other things to do. Staff, it's wonderful to sort of meet some new faces. For the first meeting of this year, I think we threw a lot of stuff in there. So I was impressed. All due respect, and I hope I'm not sounding cynical at all. I think those staff reports were great. We've heard from some of the best over the years, and I think you ladies are doing fantastic. So I hope we get to see more from you. Mary, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to let the board know that all of the planners that we have in current planning will be trained to bring projects forward to design review board.
Cool.
So you will be seeing more of Cassie and Emily, and you'll also, there may be a project for the August meeting. So we'll be able to confirm that in the next week or so, and then we'll let you know. If not, it'll definitely come forward in the September meeting. And
Okay.
Likely our new planner, Alex Idem, will be presenting that with assistance from Cassie. So
All
we're
right.
trying to get a lot of good cross training on our staff for
Smart.
all positions.
And it might help. I'm not saying there's burnout. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I do know that these DRB packages can take a lot out of you. So Mary, I think that's really smart to not saddle 1 or 2 people with it. But let's not go crazy and have 2 meetings in 2 months. That's just my thought. Any other comments from board members?
I just wanted to ask about, you know, the sign contractor that we all thought should have known better. So, and it just seems weird to just completely let it go. I mean, shouldn't staff or someone be writing them a letter and tell something?
Cassie, my guess is you guys are doing just that.
It got caught during inspection is what they said. And when we do, you know, when code compliance goes out and they notice people have done something wrong, rather than going straight to fining someone, they always just try to bring them into compliance as the first step. We always kind of give them a route to say, you know, you messed up, you did it wrong the first time, but we'll let you make it right, go through the process. If we're to get denied, you know, then they'd have to remove signs and so on, and that would be followed up on. But we do give, code compliance does give people the option to correct their wrongs.
Okay.
And I think that's very important to give the time to cure the remedy.
Oh yeah.
But it's definitely, I'm assuming, noted, and it'll be paid attention to on their next jobs.
Thank
And
you.
I was
Sorry, that's good. Heather, go ahead.
I was just going to add, I just wanted to thank staff and board for patience. I know the design review board dealing with design standards is new-ish, and I hope it doesn't always go this long, and I appreciate your patience. I'm trying to figure out how to walk the line and figure out the rules on how to do this from a board member perspective. So I appreciate your patience with us as we did that. I think it's important, and that's why I applied to be on the board, is to make sure that we try to help you guys, not slow you down. So
Thank you, Heather. And that's, we all serve a need. We all have knowledge or expertise in something, and it's great having, you know, an opinion from somebody who either has been faced with this or will be faced with this, or can understand it closer than somebody like me.
you guys can help me walk through all the sign stuff. So great.
See? Anything, Kyle?
Loved it too, Heather. Seriously, I think we really did our job tonight. And so
hope so. Yeah.
Got a good resolution there. And I hope it wasn't perceived that I was just trying to get it pushed through. And so.
No, not at all. I think the right intent was there, and we needed to have a dialogue. And so while I still love front doors and great streetscapes, I think it was a good result.
And honestly, I was fully, well, I like the build. I was fully prepared and upset to have to say, no, this is too far out. So I'm glad that, you know, the rest of you guys were able to ask the right questions, and I think it's a heck of a compromise. So I hope that the project works out. I honestly don't see why it wouldn't, and Gene didn't seem angry about it. You know, it just seemed like it's another thing he has to do, but it'll happen. And I think we'll like it.
Not perfect, but thank you guys for walking through it.
One question for Mary or Cassie or Emily. Did we have such a dry spell because of COVID? I feel like it was uncharacteristic, the length that we went between meetings.
Yeah.
I mean, was it because the design excellence overlay was still in the process of being approved and then we got slammed with the pandemic? I mean, or are we just not getting that many applicants?
Looks like Mary has something.
I think it was a little bit of all of that. So we weren't getting applications in, and then we started to receive a few applications right when COVID hit. And
Sure.
we were starting to schedule them, like the Valley View one had been scheduled, and then it had to go on hold. And then we received a few after that. So we are having a bit of we've had vacancies, I'll have to say. We've had a lot of vacancies after retirements, unable to fill positions. So these fabulous planners here tonight and their cohorts, Caitlin and Alex, and Dave DeGrandpre, we are having, you know, we can't control the amount of workload we get in the door. So every one of these development companies is submitting multiple projects our way. They do building permits, zoning compliance permits, DRB, Board of Adjustment, rezonings, conditional use requests, annexations, subdivisions, and we keep getting added new projects they would like our staff to review and move forward. So we've had to, we are having to kind of make sure that we set a priority list, that building permits are getting out the door, because those projects are ready to go. And if we move everyone to board projects, they really slow down, and we're the ones holding up getting those permits out the door. There are a few projects that have statutory deadlines, and we can't ignore those deadlines. That's subdivisions and final plats and anything to do with subdivisions. And then once we look at everyone's schedules and we say, okay, we can schedule these 2 projects and we have it scheduled for board review, those projects take precedence. But we do have a queue for almost every type of project. And we're trying to schedule them as quickly as we can, train new staff. We have 2 recruitments that we were finally, there was a freeze that went on. We had been recruiting for new staff. The planning union was able to raise salaries in negotiation with the city. It's a good thing. So hopefully we'll be able to get people, good candidates like we have now, that would like to work for the city of Missoula. And then we had COVID and a hiring freeze. So we got approval to recruit again. We have applications in, and we're hoping in the next few weeks to be offering positions to 2 new planners. It's going to take them time to train and get up to speed. And I understand all the frustration out there in the community when we have projects that people are ready to move forward. And I wish we had the staff to move them forward as quickly as we can. We have a gold star. And if you see Anna Aronofsky in public, thank her for her service.
Holy crap, yeah.
Over a year ago. And she has come back multiple times helping us review business license reviews, building permits, train new staff. I would be at a loss without her. And we're so grateful.
We know that. And Mary, full disclosure to the rest of the group, Mary, Cassie, and I have been on virtual calls for 5.5 hours today, because they were helping me out on a project earlier today for 2.5. So thank you. Bless you.
It's been a long
Thank you, Mary, for the words. And I'm happy to see everybody.
Hi, Anna. Hi.
Love you, Anna.
Every time I talk to people and developers, I tell them when they see Anna to thank you. So I hope you're getting lots of thank yous out there, Anna.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
That poor woman, keep bringing her back. That's pretty great.
Bench. It's awesome.
I learned something new from Anna every day. In fact, tonight we were texting in the middle of the DRB sign packages, and I'm asking her questions, and she's clarifying for me. Oh, okay, that's how that applies. Good. So Anna is fabulous.
That's awesome.
I think she just loves the meetings. All right. Well, I will look forward to seeing you folks either next month or the month after. Again, thanks everybody to the board. Thanks to the support staff, the development services staff, to the Gold Star All-Star, Ms. Aronofsky. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Heather, and a second by Ryan. He's right in the middle of my Brady Bunch screen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone.